What's going on, guys? It's Nick, bringing you on the channel today an update to the Umi Kairyu-Shin deck profile that I featured on my channel about a few months ago now. It's kind of funny because I just uploaded the update to my Spriggans list, and now we're jumping from the driest of sand seas to the wettest of oceans with the Umi deck profile. This deck has undergone some changes post Hypernova, and I wanted to bring it on the channel so you guys could see what the updates were, because the last video that I uploaded got a lot of views, and I know there's a lot of hardcore fans who like Umi and Mako Tsunami in general and are really happy about the support. So with that being said, guys, welcome. My name is Nick. We focus on Yu-Gi-Oh content mainly related to rogue decks and casual decks alike. If those are things that you are interested in, then I highly encourage you hit that subscribe button. We're working our way to that 1,000 subscriber benchmark, and I cannot get there without your help. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in. You know how we do it here on the channel. We're going to do monster cards first. This is a 42 card deck list, and we are leading things off with triple copies of War of Atlantis. He pretty much serves as your 4th, 5th, and 6th copy of your field spell, which is a Legendary Ocean. He can discard himself from the hand to the graveyard to allow you to add a Legendary Ocean from deck to hand. That effect is also not once per turn, so that is pretty useful. So we max out on him, obviously, because this deck does revolve around its field spell, and we need to maintain Umi as often as we can. Moving on, though, triple copies of Electric Jellyfish. This card is pretty much the main starter of the deck. He's able to send Umi from your deck to the graveyard for cost, and then he allows you to special summon any water monster from your hand to your side of the field, which is really cool. There's no restriction on what water monster you can summon, just as long as it can be summoned. Jelly can bring it out. And then if that wasn't crazy enough, while you control Umi, Jellyfish is a spell negate as well as a monster negate on a quick effect. So he's pretty much the bread and butter. Like, you want to open with this and you want to maintain this throughout the course of the duel as often as you can. Being a spell and monster negate in a main deck monster is pretty rare to see, because most main deck cards don't have negation, and it's just interesting to see that this card is one of them. So triple copies of Jelly. Moving on, though, we are on to the boss himself, the man featured on the playmat right here. Triple copies of the Ocean Dragon Lord Kairyu-Shin. This card is pretty much an FTK. It just prevents your opponent from playing, and it's just one big-ass floodgate. Basically, while you control Umi, or while Umi's on the field, each player can only control one face-up non-water monster. Now, that is a non-activated effect. That is a continuous effect that applies as soon as this card hits the field. So it's very difficult for your opponent to try and play around. In addition to that, during your main phase, you can add an Umi spell trap, a Kairyu-Shin spell trap, or a Sea Stealth spell trap from your deck to your hand. So he searches pretty much all of the archetypal spells and traps related around Umi. So this card is a mandatory 3 of. It's your boss monster. It's the piece you want to work towards and end on, and just use it to suppress the living hell out of your opponent and keep them from establishing their board. Since it's kind of like a there can be only one on legs, pretty much. So triple copies of the Ocean Dragon Lord, one of the best cards that this deck has to offer. But moving on, moving into some of the tech cards we run, we're on triple copies of Ice Jade Tremora. Now, we weren't running this card in the previous build. We were playing stuff like Ice Knights to function as like additional starters alongside Electric Jellyfish. But talking with the friend of mine who plays this deck, we realized that Tremora is pretty much kind of like an Ice Knight, but better, because you don't really need to commit the Tremora to field. She, just like the War of Atlantis, can discard herself from the hand to the graveyard as cost to allow you to special summon any water monster from your hand. Again, there's no restrictions on that, so it's pretty much just like what Jelly does to an extent. However, this is an effect that activates in hand. She is a level 5 monster, so she does become level 4 under a Legendary Ocean, because Legendary Ocean does dumb the levels down of all waters on the field and in your hand by 1, which is really unique. But the fact that you kind of just cut out the middleman, because what we were trying to solve was like Ice Knight and cards like Jelly losing to stuff like Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler. More so Ice Knight, because like if Ice Knight did get put in a situation where he was hand trapped, unless you had like an extender in hand, there wasn't much you can do with Ice Knight on the board by itself. So at least with the Tremora, you can pitch Tremora to summon out cards like the Kairyu-Shin, and then even if the Kairyu-Shin gets like impermed or something, as long as you're able to establish a Legendary Ocean, when it comes back to the opponent's turn, they're still locked under the floodgate. So we're testing with triple copies of Ice Jade Tremora, and so far it's been working out extremely well. Have no issues with the Tremora so far. And there's additional benefit to running her, which we'll get to once we cover the trap cards. But moving on with the rest of the monsters, we're on triple copies of Silent Sea Nettle. This is just a really awesome generic water level 4 extender. If you control a water monster, you special summon this card from your hand. And then it has another effect that you can target up to 3 water monsters in the graveyard and shuffle them back into the deck. Yes, Nettle can shuffle back extra deck monsters as long as they're water, but this card we mainly use just as a free extender, to help make rank 4 plays and whatnot. The only drawback is that if you use this card's effect, you are locked into water monsters for the remainder of the turn. Moving on though, running some more tech choices. We're on 1 copy of Yashiro of the Aqua. This is pretty much a retrain of the old card Maiden of the Aqua, but pretty much what she does is she can target a water monster in your graveyard and apply one of the following effects. However, if you do, you're locked into water monsters for the rest of the turn. So you can either only, if the target has the level, until the end phase, her level and her name becomes the same as that monster's. That effect doesn't really come up. To be quite honest, at least not in this version. That effect only really matters if you're playing like the Legendary Fisherman, for example, because in order for you to summon a Fisherman 3, you need to tribute a Legendary Fisherman from field. So if you have a Fisherman in grave, Yoshiro can target that Fisherman, her name becomes the Fisherman, and you can use her as tribute fodder for Fisherman 3. But since we're not running the Fisherman, and that's more focused around a casual build, that effect doesn't apply. What you mainly use this card for is the secondary effect, and it says, if Umi's on the field, you can target a water monster in your graveyard, and special summon that monster in defense position. Additionally, you can banish the Yoshiro from your graveyard, and target an Umi in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So she gives you some really cool recursion, in addition to being like a monster reborn on legs of sorts. So really cool card as a one-of. She is searchable through certain spells that we run in this deck, so keep that in mind. Moving on though, we're on the 1 copy of Kodoris. This card is another searchable one-of we play in the deck just for some really cool non-once per turn removal, and some of the best removal there is, because it doesn't destroy, it sends cards your opponent controls to grave, so it dodges things that like have, immunity to card effect destruction, which is really cool. So the 1 copy of Kodoris is crucial in this list. Then we play the 1 copy of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier. Why? Because this card, upon normal or special summon, allows you to add a Ice Barrier spell trap from deck to hand. You'll see what we're playing for that once we get to the trap cards, but this card is crucial. He is a level 5 monster, but keep in mind he does become level 4 under a Legendary Ocean, so you are able to normal summon it for turn, as long as you have a Legendary Ocean on field. Moving on, we're on 1 copy of Mega Fortress Whale. This card is pretty much a retrain of the old Fortress Whale ritual monster that Mako Tsunami used to run. But this card now, while Umi's on the field, you can activate this effect. Your water monsters can attack directly this turn. So think of this card as kind of like the Maizen the Battle Ninja, how he just makes water monsters you control able to attack the opponent directly. The only difference is that this is an activated effect, whereas Maizen is a continuous effect. But additionally, during the opponent's battle phase, quick effect, you get to target a face-up monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So if your opponent goes on the offense, as long as you have Umi on field, this thing can pop a monster card during the opponent's battle phase, which is really cool. And if that wasn't bad enough, when this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can either add to your hand or special summon a water warrior monster from your deck or graveyard. And the water warrior we play is actually the General Wayne of the Ice Barrier, which is really cool synergy there. So that is it for the Mega Fortress Whale. And now onto the last monster we main deck. 1 copy of Phantasm Spiral Dragon. We were running the OG vanilla Kairyu-Shin, but we decided to run this as our normal monster target in this deck. And it'll make sense as to why we play it once we get to the spells, but we run this card because it's a giant beat stick. It's 3100 under a Legendary Ocean, and it just looks badass, so why not? But moving on, that's it for the monsters, guys. Now we're on to the spells. Triple copies of the Ocean that is legendary. This card's name, it becomes Umi while it's on the field. Or it's always treated as Umi, excuse me. Even in deck, graveyard, hand, banish, it's always Umi. But all water monsters in the field gain 200 attack and defense, and then reduce the levels of all water monsters in both players' hands and on the field by 1. So very cool field spell, very old field spell, but the fact that it got new life breathed into it recently is why we're on this deck. Moving on though, triple copies of Fish Sonar. This is a very cool spell card that the Umi support got in the Legendary Duelist structure, or Legendary Duelist side set that came out like this past fall. But pretty much this card allows you to add a level 7 or lower monster from your deck to your hand that mentions Umi, or that is a water normal monster. Then, if Umi is on the field, you can special summon a water normal monster from your deck. So that's why we run the vanilla Phantasm Spiral Dragon, because we can special summon it from deck for free off the Fish Sonar as long as we have an Umi on our field. So this card serves as like, additional copies of any monster in the deck that mentions Umi in its text. So we can search some pretty cool things with that. Then, because we don't actually main deck hand traps in this list, and we're not really going to be going first or winning the die roll every time, we main deck a playset of Dark Ruler No Mores just to help us with going second. We kind of need a go second blowout since we're not on hand traps in this list. Moving on though, 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance. You could make the argument that we should be playing Prosperities, but right now we ain't got that Prosperity money, so we're settling on the 2 copies of Extravagance, which honestly does just as good of a job in my own opinion. Is Prosperity probably better? Yes, but in the grand scheme, Extravagance still pulls its weight where it needs it. Then we play 1 copy of Sea Stealth 2, a brand new continuous spell that came out of the most recent Legendary Duelists water set. And this card's name becomes Umi while it's on the field or in the graveyard. So it's effectively your 4th copy of Umi, which is really cool. While this card's on the board, the opponent cannot target water monsters you control with non-water monster effects. So that means like your cards can't get hit by Effect Veiler. Your opponent, isn't able to summon... I'm drawing blanks on monsters that target, but you get the gist. They cannot target your water monsters unless the monster that they're targeting it with is also a water. Besides that, at the start of the battle phase, you can special summon from your hand or graveyard 1 monster that mentions Umi, or a water normal monster in defense position, but destroy it during the end of the battle phase. So this is pretty cool, catches your opponent off guard. When you go battle phase, or if they go battle phase, and you're able to special summon a Kairyu-Shin you have in your graveyard, for example, and then since you have Umi on field, Kairyu-Shins, there can be only 1 restriction applies, and it forces the opponent to sweep their whole board, which is pretty cracked. So 1 copy of that. We also play, rounding out the spells, 1 copy of Fury of Kairyu-Shin. We play the 1 of because we can search this off the Ocean Dragon Lord. And what this card is it's a searcher for Torrential Tribute. It lets you add a Torrential Tribute from deck to your hand. Then it's got a really cool graveyard effect where if a water monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So that is really cool. So we play this as a 1 of. That rounds up the spells, guys. Now we're going to dive into the traps. We play 1, 2, 3 copies of Ice Barrier. This is the Ice Barrier trap that the General Wayne searches, and this card is absolutely nuts. It's a battle trap, but it's a good battle trap. Because when an attack is declared involving your opponent's monster, you can change that opponent's monster's attack to 0, negate its effects. Also, it cannot change its battle position. Those effects are permanent, and this card does not target, which is really insane. Additionally, you can banish this card from your graveyard to send a level 5 or higher water monster from your deck to your grave, and if you do, you can add a water monster from your graveyard to your hand. So this serves in the graveyard as additional copies of Rhoda of sorts, which is really, really cool. So a playset of that. It's also not once per turn on the first effect, so feel free to watch your opponent walk into it a bunch of times. It's great. But moving on, 2 copies of Sea Stealth Attack. We run this card as a 2 of. I feel like playing 3 of it is just too bricky. But upon activation, this card lets you activate an Umi from the graveyard or your hand to your side of the field. And then while you control Umi, this card gives you protection for all of your face-up spells and traps by banishing a water monster you control for cost, which is really cool. It prevents your face-up spells and traps from being destroyed by card effects, even if this leaves the field. And then if that wasn't crazy enough, at the start of the damage step, if your water monster whose original level is 5 or higher battles an opponent's monster, you immediately destroy that opponent's monster at the start of the damage step, and that effect is not once per turn. So all of your Kairyu-Shins and any water monster who's level 5, while you control Umi, anytime they battle into anything, it's kind of like the effect of El Shaddoll Construct. At the start of damage step, this activates and it pops that monster, which is nuts. So really cool card there. And then we play 2 copies of Kairyu-Shin's Dark Reef. This is a really nice card. It allows you to special summon a bunch of monsters from your deck that mention Umi in its text. This is cool because this can help you flood the board with cards like Electric Jellyfish, Kairyu-Shin, the Mega Fortress Whale, pretty much whatever you need. It helps you toolbox your deck, so that is really cool. And then for the last traps, 2 traps we play, 2 copies of Torrential. This card is still an insane blowout, and it puts in a lot of work for us. So that rounds out the main deck, guys. 42 card list. Now we're going to jump into the extra deck. We're on 2 copies of Toad. We're pretty much playing doubles of everything because, to be honest with you, the extra deck doesn't come up all that much, but we played duplicates of it all because of Kashtira mainly, and we don't want to have anything ripped out of our extra deck that we might need. So 2 copies of Toad, obviously it's pretty self-explanatory, it's just an Omni Negate, and we make it using Bahamut Shark, which I will be showcasing shortly. But 2 copies of number 47 Nightmare Shark. This is pretty much just an enabler for Zeus, which we are running in this extra deck. This card allows us to attack the opponent directly, which is really nice. 2 copies of the number 4 Stealth Kraken. There are times when we go into this and watch the opponent like struggle to deal with it, because it is a quick effect pop and burn of a monster they control, which is really cool. And yeah, this card is, we can effectively get 2 pops off of it. We make it on our turn and then blow something up, and then on the opponent's turn, while it's still on the board, we can pop another monster. So this card can, in a simplified game state, can keep the pressure on the opponent really, really well. Then here are the 2 Bahamut Shark, which is how we can make our Toad. But if we don't want to make Toad, we can also make the number 47 Nightmare Shark using Bahamut as well. So something to keep in mind there. But Bahamut is obviously really strong in this deck list. And then we played double copies of the Divine Arsenal Zeus, because again, we do play a lot of Xyz monsters, and sometimes when we're not waterlocked, we want to just make a Zeus and sweep the board. So 2 copies of that. Then for the links we run, 2 Mistar Boy, and 2 Iria the Water Charmer, just 2 generic water link 2s that we can run. Mr. Boy is nice, just buffing all of our monster stats. And the Water Charmer is nice, allowing us to steal an opponent's water monster from their graveyard if they have one. And Iria can help us link climb into the last card we play, which is a World Sea Dragon Zelantis. Now this is just a one of. It really doesn't come up all that often, so we don't play it as a 2 of in this extra deck. But when we do go into this card, it's pretty much a blowout. Zelantis is a very strong Link 4 monster, and it just looks extremely badass. This is what resides at the bottom of that ocean. But that's it for the extra deck, guys. Now we're going to brush upon the side deck briefly. This format, like I said, it's very diverse, but we can't overlook the fact that Kashtira is still one of the best decks. So as a result, we do got to sideboard the triple copies of Dogoran, the Mad Flame Kaiju, just because, when we go second, we just need to be able to Kaiju over certain things. Also, too, I've noticed an increase in Dragoon. A lot of more decks are playing Dragoon now. It's like people forgot how good the card was and they're running it. So this deck doesn't really have a good out to Dragoon. So that's where the Kaiju's really, put in a lot of the work. So triple copies of Dogoran. Then for our, back row matchups, we play 1 Duster and triple Cosmic Cyclone. There's Trap Tricks, Labyrinth in the format now. And we just don't want to lose to their trap sacky bullshit. So we play that. Then if we're also going second, we play the 1 Talents and the 1 Change of Heart. Again, just to help break opponents' boards when going second. That's pretty self-explanatory there. And then there's a lot of decks that like to banish things this format. Decks I could think of like Branded Despia likes to banish a lot, Sword Soul likes to banish a lot, and especially Kashtira, they like to banish a whole bunch, and even Runic. Runic as well, seeing an increase in popularity lately. So in order to give those decks the big middle finger, we are playing in the sideboard triple copies of Imperial Iron Wall. This card just prevents either player from banishing cards. When you think about that, how good that is, this format, you realize you probably should be running this in your side deck as well. And then to round out the last card on the side, triple Gozen match for when we're going first. And if it, we can just side these in and floodgate the living hell out of our opponent. In addition to Kairyu-Shin being its own floodgate, we can floodgate them as well using Gozen and just keep them off their game plan. So that is it, guys, for the update to this Umi control or Kairyu-Shin control deck. Stay tuned on the channel for more content coming your way. I'm going to be bringing you guys some really spicy stuff. And like I said, I am still trying to put together a live duel video to bring to you guys as well. But if you like this deck profile, leave a comment down below what you liked about it. Like the video if you haven't, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done that either. But with that being said, this is Nick signing out. I think I'm going to go take a swim.